Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world. I hope this finds you well. Today, I'm going to look specifically at Kaspa Charts, and I have a few different perspectives to share. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is my personal opinion and my personal viewpoint on what I see in the markets. Um, so the first chart I have is a comparison with Cardano. So we'll update the accumulation schematic, the Wyckoff accumulation we've been following, and potential times we can expect for a potential accumulation range. And then lastly, we have some channels to look at and how price tends to interact with the bottoms and tops and the midlines. So without further ado, let's first take a look at Cardano compared to Kaspa. As you can see, the price action from last cycle, from the 2021 cycle, was fairly similar. We can even compare prices, which are similar, and the reason why they're similar is because the supply was also similar on Cardano. I believe at the peak, the Cardano peak from this cycle, around $3, there was 32 billion coins circulating, and Kaspa has a max supply of 23 billion, or 28.7 billion, and its total supply at the moment is 23. Cardano has a max supply of 45 billion, and its current supply is 36. At the time of its peak, it was 32. And I honestly have not looked up what it was right here, but it was less than 32 because at its peak, it was 32 billion. So the reason why is a function of the market cap and the supply. And so the price just so happened to be very similar. It's a nice comparison, also given that Charles Hoskinson, founder of Cardano and worked on Ethereum, also speaks highly of the founder of Kaspa. So it's one reason why I like to compare it fundamentally and also tokenomics wise. It's a good comparison in my opinion. So we can see that this did in fact have a very similar pattern before it really broke out. Of course, this is all speculatory, and Bitcoin pumping will help the cause to get Kaspa moving as well, and the entire market, altcoins, everything really. So we hope that Bitcoin does well. The accumulation schematic here that we've been following, we have this spring down here, this low volume sell-off, as you can see here. We jumped the creek and we've come down, back up, last point of support. It's gotten pretty low, so if we broke down below, obviously this would be completely invalidated. As of now, it's kind of dipping into the candle bodies down here, so it's not super clean, but you can see on the daily that these are wicking up. These are being bought up down here in this range, this accumulation range. So, we can watch it. It's not like super clean, but then again, technical analysis is not totally a science. It's kind of an art. So we'll continue to watch it. It's certainly interesting. And if we draw a, let me get this out of here. If we draw a Wyckoff, I haven't updated this now with this low. If we draw a Wyckoff here, or sorry, draw a Fibonacci, upside targets could potentially be up to, technically on the 4.236 would be 46 cents, and then psychologically it could be 50 cents. Of course, this is just my opinion and speculation, and price could do anything. It could go down. So Don't necessarily take that to the bank. This is just my thoughts, thinking out loud. And here is a time, a nice way to look at the time. This last accumulation phase at 4 cents lasted about 216 days before it broke up. And a similar time span would put this in June or July. I'm not saying that that has to repeat. I'm just pointing that out because a lot of people are impatient, and rightly so. It's been pretty boring action, price action, especially if you got in at the euphoria, the hype, when Kaspa was putting in its peak, current peak at around 18 cents, and you've just been holding on this whole time, like that kind of, that's never fun. So just pointing out this length, it was quite a long time, like 216 days, a similar time span would without a doubt put it in the summer. So if it happened, that would be pretty, it wouldn't have been something that we couldn't have anticipated, and it wouldn't be abnormal. So that's that. And then here we look at these descending channels. Price, the way it responds to a descending channel, comes down, can bounce off these lower levels, and then back test these midlines, and then eventually can break out, back tested as support. And then KAS was just a very clean trading asset because it was fair launched. It just does super clean trading, back testing as support, boom, higher. Right now we have broken above the midline, and if we turn that to support and break higher and back test the top of the channel as support, then we could have a reason to believe it could go higher. So obviously what we don't want to see is we don't want to see it come down and start back testing as resistance. That would be bearish, so that could spell downside. So we want to keep an eye on this and see, depending on your tilt, your personal bias. If you're bullish, then you would buy these back tests of either down here would be a great level, or up here would be, on this midline would be a level to buy. Same as up here if it starts back testing the top. If you're bearish, you would potentially short at one of these, depending on what you believe. So that's that. As for me, I'm bullish on KASP overall. Fundamentally, I think it's undervalued. I'm looking to turn this into support. So that's my personal bias. And so there you have it. KASP has just been really nice, clean trading, and time frame. Patience pays, maybe, right? So I'm being patient. My targets are much higher. This is kind of on the next swing, what I'm hoping for, but I'm hoping personally that KASP is a top 10 asset and that it can make its way based on its fundamentals into the top 10. A lot of people, I think, are feeling uncertain about KASP not being on any big exchanges like Coinbase or Binance. And I think that sort of thing comes. I don't know when it's going to come, but because it's fair launched, they are very organic, grassroots, and it's just really a technology that has been put out there into the world, and they typically don't really pay listing fees to get on centralized exchanges. They pretty much have been listed for free everywhere, and I think they have their head down. They're working on the technology. They're not necessarily, unfortunately, maybe schmoozing as much as they could, and I think that's probably maybe part of the reason why it's been taking a while to get on Coinbase and Binance. But hopefully, it happens. Cardano, for example, if you look at well, let's take a look, actually. Why not? Let's take a look at when Cardano, for example, got onto Coinbase. You can see, so here's the Coinbase chart. it didn't get onto Coinbase until price was um, literally, boom, $1.88. So if you bought it as soon as it got listed, you had a maximum potential return of 63%. Amazing. Look at that. And then if you held on, you had a loss of 87%. So what's the takeaway here? To me, you don't buy when a coin gets listed on something like Binance or Coinbase necessarily. The caveat is, of course, the time in the market cycle. Where are we? Bitcoin, obviously, this is 2021. So Bitcoin was like putting in its peak in November. Um, and so the time in the market cycle matters too. But Bitcoin was putting in its peak really more or less. It was a long peak, it was a double peak. And that's when Coinbase listed it. So right now, Bitcoin is still pretty much just at its previous all-time high. So again, patience, I think, at the end of the day. If you're bullish on Kaspa, you focus on the fundamentals, and then you be patient. At least that's what I'm doing. So that's more like talking about myself here. So I can be patient. I guess other thoughts I would add would be to just um, be patient in general. If you got into if you got into if you got into crypto in the bear market, then you can afford to kind of ride the volatility with less emotional um, volatility as well. It's easier to be in down here and experiencing all that we are experiencing up here than it is to have just entered somewhere along the way or at the top and be questioning whether or not we're going to do something like a triple peak. And if you are just hearing that for the first time, you can watch my last video and probably two before that. I've talked about it as a potential and what things like that could look like. So if you're in from down here, that scenario is probably less scary because, in my opinion, if that happens, we look at some moving averages like these ones, the 20 and 21 week SMA and EMA. We look at the 200 week, I believe this is like the 280 week and the 350 week. So we look at all these moving averages if we come down. But that hasn't happened yet, and I think if you're in down here, that's less concerning. If you're in at the top, then I understand that things might feel a little scary right now. But one thing that if there's any solace to your fears, I would just know that if you're holding something that has fundamental value, hopefully it will put in a new peak again. If you're buying meme coins or just things that really are just narrative plays, who really knows, honestly, at the end of the day? And again, all this is just speculative. We don't really know. Some of this technology is so new that we don't really know what the real value is, maybe long term and adoption wise, and how it's all going to fit together into the economic landscape, and everyone has their opinions and thoughts on that, and what true like decentralized currency and what Bitcoin was trying to achieve, how it really integrates into the society at large. So um, everyone can have their views and opinions on that, and maybe even Bitcoin is still speculative, although at this point, given that it's being adopted and ETFs are being given the green light, Hong Kong just, I guess, gave Bitcoin, the ETF green light yesterday. We feeling a little more optimistic maybe about the industry and the technology. And Kaspa, I believe, is fundamentally as strong as Bitcoin. Obviously, much more speculative, and that's just how it is when something is young and emerging. But given that it's a proof of work running at 600 times the speed of Bitcoin, I see the potential there, and its launch was fair, no VCs. It's really just a technology that's been put out there. So, so if you are holding something that you feel good about, that really helps if the market does go south, because if you don't feel good about what you're holding, it's going to be easy to capitulate, meaning sell your investment, and potentially at the lows when things get really scary and the sentiment is really bearish. That's very common. So if we continue to the upside, this is just a pattern I noticed, like Elliott waves on Bitcoin. We could potentially reach, if we just repeated this pattern from last time, speculative targets do be speculation, 200,000. That would be really nice for the altcoin market. And if that plays out, the timing is hard to know, as always, but we can also look at timing-wise. I think it's on this chart. Let me check. Yes, here it is. So breaking out past the prior all-time high, could put it in 119 days. Last cycle it took to get to the first peak. Could put it this summer. As far as the halving goes, if we repeat the timing between the halving and the first peak, that's next summer. So these are like the ultra bullish scenarios, A and B, and then of course the triple peak scenario is a bearish one where we would be looking at these moving averages as price comes down. So there you have it. Those are some potential outcomes on what we could be looking at over the next year. Only time will tell. So always manage your risk, don't overinvest, etc., etc. And if you like this content, feel free to like and subscribe.